press today. It's almost like they can't believe it. And let's take a look at the front page of Aujourd'hui en France, the simple word libre with an exclamation mark. French papers don't use exclamation marks that often, so this is a really big deal. Also, these four photos of the four men of the day, of course, Daniel Laribe, Marc Ferret, Thierry Dole, and Pierre Legrand, free after 1,000 days in captivity. Well, let's take a look also at 20 minutes, the simple word at last, enfin. So with a photo there, once again, of the four men. And Libération also, very simply, says a sigh of relief. That's on the front page of Libération. Now, in their editorial, Libération says that this is a relief not only for the families, of course, of these hostages, but also for France. They also talk about incredible emotion here today. And if you're interested to know more about the four hostages, Libération has portraits of them, details about their family lives, what they were up to before their lives were put on hold for 3 years.
The paper's also focusing, of course, on the months of negotiations behind the scenes to secure their release here.
Absolutely. There's a very interesting article in Le Figaro today that talks about these very secret negotiations that almost fell through several times, and as well as the several attempts to free the hostages, which also failed. Now, there were 3 channels of negotiations, according to Le Figaro. First of all, of course, France, through the Secret Service and all their partners in the region, but all this was very complicated by France's military operation in Mali. Niger proved to be instrumental in the release of the hostages, and in fact, all the French press and François Hollande have been very clear to stress just how important Niger was in the release. And in fact, it was the Nigerian president, Mamadou Issoufou, who actually told Hollande that the men had been released. And then the third channel is the private channel, perhaps through negotiations through Areva. And this is something that we're also coming up about, is the details of their release. It's still hazy for now, and one key question is whether or not there was any kind of compensation. The government has been very clear about the fact that there was no ransom, and in fact, a lot of the French papers are also saying there was no ransom. And Le Monde takes a closer look at the official French policy in this matter and actually pulls out an article that appeared in March and says that for the last couple of decades, the policy has been to say officially, we won't pay a ransom, but then behind the scenes, ransoms were paid. But when Hollande came to power, he made it very, very clear that he was going to change the policy. There was going to be a very drastic change in doctrine. France would no longer negotiate with hostage takers. There would be no monetary transaction from the government, but also no other payments from the families or companies. So a radical change in policy. But have things really changed? Well, Metro interviews an Africa specialist, Antoine Glaser, who says actually a ransom was certainly paid. Now, France as a state may not have been in the front line of paying this ransom, but there was a ransom that was paid, probably through the private sector.
Yeah, you mentioned François Hollande there. A lot of the papers also looking at what this means for him politically. A bit of a sigh of relief.
Absolutely. A lot of papers are saying this is a victory for Hollande, and the timing couldn't be better. This is an article in Libération, for instance, that points out that he's at a record low once again in opinion polls, and advisors around him are thinking, oh, at last we have some good news to tell French people. But this article points out that Hollande is being very modest about this because he doesn't want to seem like he's using it for political gains. But this international victory doesn't stop him from facing very serious domestic problems, and Le Parisien takes a closer look at this as well and says that this hostage release is a divine surprise for him. His government is being blasted from the right, of course, the center, but also the left for not being able to make up its mind, especially about the government's tax policy, of course. Yesterday, the government backtracked on a road tax called the eco tax after violent demonstrations against it. And a lot of papers have this feeling that if it weren't for this hostage release, well, it would have been a very dark day for Hollande. There's a cartoon in Le Parisien today that points out just how Hollande is happy about this. You can see him there saying, our French hostages can come home, and little advisors there in the background saying, well, there is progress in the way Hollande is dealing with the crisis. But don't worry, Hollande did get lambasted in the press today despite this victory. Let's take a look at the front. What a surprise. Let's take a look at the front page of Le Monde. He says, they wonder, can he still do anything? The government seems paralyzed, and Le Figaro goes further and says the government is paralyzed. So there you have it. Breath of fresh air for the president, but not likely to last very long.
At least some good news for François Hollande. All right, Flo, thanks very much. Flo Brunet with the French papers here on France 24. Coming up then, the very latest on those hostages. We'll be talking to Doug Herbert, our international affairs editor, shortly. And according to a Turkish proverb, every Turk is born a soldier, and yet twice the number of conscripts killed in battle committed suicide in 2012. We have a special report on those campaigning for change in the Turkish army in focus in the next half hour.